When people post two-card readings online as they're practicing and learning the system of the Lenormand, they'll often say, what does this mean? What do these cards mean? This is my daily draw, or I'm practicing, but I don't understand what these two cards mean. When you see something like this, my first question would always be, well, what was your question? If you're doing drills and just learning the Lenormand, it's really a great activity to sit with two cards or three cards and just write down as many things as you think that they might mean. When it comes down to nuts and bolts and you're doing an actual reading, just to vaguely put these down, it's going to be too wide. There's too much context this could be attached to. These cards really have to stick to whatever the question is. They have to be attached to the context of your question. One of the biggest issues I see for new readers and intermediate readers is they're working really hard to get the meanings of these cards so much that they forget the context of the question. Don't forget what you asked, just write it down if you need to, but make sure these have to do with what you're asking. So if you're asking, will I get the job, and you get these, it doesn't have to do with malicious gossip, or it doesn't have to do with somebody lying. You're asking about the job itself, so keep it related to the job. If somebody asks a question like, will I get the job, and you get these two cards, this would not be, oh, you're going to find a love interest, or a love interest will divert you. Your question was a job. This has to do with a contract, and this has to do with something you love. These are two positive cards, so it's yes, yes. So basically, the answer to your question is yes. Same thing here. Still two positive cards, and things will go good. If you're asking about a relationship, then these cards can come into mean. If you were to say, will he ask me out? These are yes cards too. And it may even be something where it's a little bit longer, because now we're relating this question to the context of, will he ask me out? And it's like, yes, and this person may be really committed. Those are relationship related. Is he trustworthy? Same thing here, yes. Now, if this is a platonic relationship and you get this, and you ask if someone's trustworthy, it doesn't mean they're necessarily in love with you. These are just yes, and this person cares about you. Will my book sell? You don't want to say, oh, but you're going to get married. These are about answering the question. Keep to the context, okay? If you're asking, again, let's say about health, and you get these two cards, you don't want to start saying you're going to have some issues in your family or in your home, where you're living. You may find with talking to the person that it may have to do with fumes that are in the house, or carbon monoxide or radon or something like that. But basically, these two cards, you don't want to apply in most situations to something that's out of the context of the question. So any cards that come up will be directly attached and related to the question you're asking. And that can change everything. For a really small spread like this, you kind of create the context, and then they create the direction that brings you to the answer. Always, always keep the concept of the answer close to what you're asking about. Will I stay at this job? And then someone will look at this and say, oh, a friend will bring you trouble, or you've got a troublesome friend. Well, that really has nothing to do with what was asked. And it's a really kind of a sloppy reading. It takes you out in no man's land where you're not even asking, and it may have no relationship to what might be happening in your life, because the cards are trying to speak a language about, will I stay at this job? If you're curious and want to learn a little bit more, if you're saying, well, I don't know, does that mean stay or go? Am I just going to deal with it? Draw another card. Because if you end up drawing the coffin, and that's your third card down, guess what? It ends. If you end up pulling something else, like the path, that's also a choice or a decision or a split. If you end up pulling something like this, will I stay at the job? The job is driving you nuts. It's a troublesome job, or there's a troublesome person there. This gives a lot of grief. But this is like being loyal to it. It's like, I'm going to deal with it no matter what. It's like the martyr complex, or maybe there aren't any other options at this time. So make sure the cards always come back to the question. Make sure there's a strong umbilical cord between the two of them. If you're asking, will you get promoted? You may be loyal, but this is trouble, and that may mean they may not be loyal to you, or you may not be able to get connected and loyal to that promotion. It's just the snake defines the answer. If this is here and you're asking about that promotion, you may be able to get it because it ends in dog, but ooh, Wonder if you might like it. So if you're looking at yes/no questions like this, take a look at the punctuation at the end of it. If you're not clear on what it says at first, it's perfectly okay to draw a third card. These are tiny little spreads. If someone asks about their health, tell me about my health, how will my health be this year? And you do health readings, and you get bear and you get mice, you don't want to say something like, oh, you've got mother issues, or oh, I see a job deteriorating, or I see you're trying to manage something and you just can't do it. Well, if that's related to the health, that may be so, but this, you have to stick to the context of the question, because in this won't be your mother card. This is going to be describing the health. Is it strong? Well, with the mice, probably not as good as it usually is. If it were something instead, like bear and heart, it looks like very strong and good health. That's a good thing. And again, if you're asking about physical characteristics, here we have a hairy person, or even a person who is kind of curvaceous, but they may have very interesting teeth. What you don't want to say is this person has mother issues, or the mother-in-law is going to give you issues, because what the question was is, what will this person look like? Hairy, interesting teeth, or maybe a gap tooth, or a buck teeth or something. So while doing your readings and practicing, all the different possibilities of these cards are an excellent way to test yourself, to drill yourself, put them in different orders, see what they might mean, how does that change the meaning. These are all fabulous exercises. But when it comes down to the grit and you're doing an actual reading, make sure if it's a little spread like this, you only have maybe 3 words or 3 concepts here that are fast. You want to make sure you set up a really clearly defined question so you know actually what your cards are talking about. And what you don't want to do is get so stuck into certain meanings that you forget what you wrote. So if it does help you, write down your questions. Make sure you can go back to it in case you're not quite sure how you worded it, and you can always return to that, but make sure you always apply the cards to the context of the question. The question you ask is going to be every bit as important as the cards that you read. If you're asking a really sloppy question, or if it's too broad, you may not be asking what you think you're asking. So always come back to the context of what's being asked.